And as per usual, our chapter of Learning from Leaders will be hosted by Peter Van Am. He has been working with us for so many years, and he is the author of Before I Was a CEO book, which I'm pretty sure you have all seen on campus because we have them all around. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm pretty sure you will enjoy this afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you.
To be back, it's fantastic, in fact, to be back here in Munich. You know, I don't know if many of you have been in this particular location before. Can you just raise your hands if you've been here before? So a couple of people. And I'm just going to ask also the people up there, anyone has been here? Yeah, a couple of people. You know, it's a very magical location because just last week, this was the same location where the Munich Security Conference took place, where basically all the world leaders came to discuss the most pressing issues in defense from around the world. You had several prime ministers and representatives from all over the world to talk, for example, about the war in Ukraine. So we're honored to be in this very special location. And we're also honored to be listening today to three very distinguished business leaders. We're going to be learning about business, about best practices, about your own careers, and what you can go and do. And we're going to start with a former colleague of mine, Cynthia Hansen. Cynthia is the managing director of the Innovation Foundation. And it's one place that actually, if you wonder what it does, it's all in the name. It's a foundation, meaning it's a non-for-profit, and it focuses on innovation. For the details, we're going to ask Cynthia to come up on the stage and tell us more about that. But just maybe a brief introduction about Cynthia herself. I know Cynthia from before she was at the Innovation Foundation. That, by the way, is part of Adecco, that very large workplace solutions, is that how you call it? Workplace solutions company based in Zurich. And before that, she was with me at the World Economic Forum in Geneva. And she did many different things there. Professional services, strategic partnerships, content strategy, I think you even did. So she really did many different things there over the course of a decade. Before that, she worked at the State Department in the United States. She was a consultant, so somebody who really has a very, very big experience, broad experience, and in many different countries. She studied at LSE, the London School of Economics, where she did NGO management. And before that, she studied in Japan, is that right?
I taught in Japan.
So we're going to ask you all about that. At Puget University, correct? And she's here now today with us. So I want to ask to give a very warm welcome to Cynthia, our first speaker at this year's Learning from Leaders. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions in this chair in a minute. But first, the floor is yours to tell us about the Innovation Foundation.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you today. So I've been thinking a lot about this idea of nexus. Do you know what nexus means? So nexus is a place where things overlap or where there's a connection. And what interests me about that is the interesting things that happen when you have unexpected connections. And so a huge amount of what we do at the Innovation Foundation is based on what happens when you put together different people with different perspectives. What happens when you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and you just put the right ingredients together and you see what happens. You have to give some structure to it, put some guardrails on it, but that's what's really exciting. But we didn't do this overnight. So just to let you know a bit of background, the Innovation Foundation is, as Peter said, the global corporate foundation of the Adecco Group. And we started off in 2017 as really an aggregator. We were put together first to take some programs and projects out of the group and put them under one umbrella so that they could drive synergy. That worked to some extent. We stitched these things together, but very quickly we started up the Social Innovation Lab, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. But we grew organically. Some more things were taken out of the group and put into the foundation, up to the point where we're managing a very large portfolio that was pulling in a lot of different directions. And the tipping point was really when we had a change of chairman. So this is where it's really important, back to nexus. What's the combination of the interests of the group, the interests of society, the things that are working, the things that are not working, the megatrends out there in the world? What happens when those all crash together? And it was really that moment of the change of leadership in the group and in the foundation that let us do something extraordinary. So we did a review with the board and the chairman, and we decided to take a very brave step. We decided to actually move away from all of the legacy programs and projects and to narrow down the focus to something very crisp and very approachable. So we narrowed the focus to just employability and access to labor markets for underserved populations. So people who are falling out of the workforce or in danger of falling out of the workforce. And we agreed to only work as the Social Innovation Lab, and I'll show you in a minute what that means. So we spent all of 2021 basically reshaping the whole organization. We changed the name, the brand, the entire structure, the governance, the board, the funding structure, the staff, and the operating model. So essentially, everything. And then as of 2022, we were totally new. So we landed on a vision, mission, and values that are very close to the Adecco group. They're still about the future of work. They're still about making the future work for everyone, but they take a smaller slice. The Adecco group is about everything related to employment and the life cycle of work for everybody, and our slice is that idea of underserved populations. And how do we do this? So we've created this unique model that we call Scan, Build, and Scale. And this is something that you can actually use in any part of your life. So in simple terms, scan is data-driven landscape scanning. See what the landscape looks like, see what the trends are, who are the actors, and then you look for what problems are bubbling up that no one has solved. And then, once you know what you're trying to crack and for what audience, then you can move to the next step. And build is design thinking-based ideation. So you come up with lots of different ideas, let everything bubble up, and then you've got criteria to narrow down to the things that seem most practical, most plausible, might work. And you set up little tests. Spin up something very small and light and test it. See what works, see what doesn't work. Retool, do it again. And do it enough times that you're pretty certain that you've got a handful of things that you think will work. Then you can go into scale. And scale for us is an accelerator that we built from scratch. So this is where we take ideas and we turn them into real products. So we build a small venture team, 3-4 people around each idea that we want to take from a basic prototype into a real product. And we give them 6 months, not a lot of time, and a little budget, reasonable budget, and say, go and build an MVP. We want a program that looks roughly like this, that serves, in this case, young mothers in Mexico and helps them to be more work ready. Or we want a tech solution that helps women come back into work after a career break. Or we want a government policy that's going to help people who are over 55 to re-enter work. So it could be lots of different things. In that scale process, we actually turn it into a real product. And then if it gets past that first 6 months, they'll get another 6 months and another bit of budget, and they have to finish the product up to the point where it leaves the foundation. Because we're like a flywheel. So we don't keep anything, and we don't give grants, we don't incubate anybody else's startup, and we don't fund things for the long term. So these things that we build have to be sustainable out there in the real world. So they could be stood up as their own organizations, for-profit or not-for-profit. They could go into a partner organization. For us, it doesn't matter, as long as it is the right vehicle to get that solution into the hands of the people who need it. So we've got 3 live projects, and we can talk about this more. But the first one I mentioned was about young mothers in Mexico. So in this case, we built a social campaign built on the idea of credible information about the world of work and your pathway in it, delivered by someone who looks and sounds like she's from your neighborhood. She's your cousin, she's your sister, she's your neighbor, not someone far away from the government or someone who doesn't understand your reality. And then with that, we built a tech solution that translates the lived experience that young mothers, think teenage mothers, have already, that they could actually turn into skills and competencies for a job. So if you think of a young mother, how does she spend her day? She might do shopping for the family. That means she can balance a budget. She can make trade-offs. She can make decisions. She might take public transportation, so she can decide where she's going, she can navigate, she can figure out how much it's going to cost. She might need to balance childcare, so she can multitask, she can figure out who else can help her. So she's got skills and competencies. She just might not recognize them, and they might not show up on a CV. So our tool actually translates that into a report and ultimately into a CV. So these are the kinds of things we're doing. So think about it more like a venture studio. It's like a venture studio that's just focused on solving problems related to the world of work that are going to create social change. And we've got the advantage of actually sitting within the Adecco group. We're actually a separate legal organization, but we're completely funded by the Adecco group. And we have all the access to the skills, the competency, the expertise, the knowledge, the data within the Adecco group. So the advantage there is we have the ability to scale, and we have the ability to not just shift what's happening in a small community, but build it once and then expand it to other countries, to other geographies, to other target audiences, and that's how we create scale. But it's not just about what we create in the Social Innovation Lab, it's also about how we do it. So when we did this big switch of the whole operating model, we agreed with the board that we would have two objectives, just two objectives. One is to create the best possible solutions out of the Social Innovation Lab, and then the second one is to share. So this isn't something that we keep to ourselves. We actually open source everything we do. Our methodology, the case studies, how we do it, how we select, the mistakes that we've made, everything, all of the learnings get completely open sourced so that anyone can take those models, anyone can take the learnings and take it forward. And we firmly believe that this is the way we will create social impact, systems change at scale. So this is what I would love to have the chance to talk some more about with you and with Peter.
Thank you so much. That's an absolutely amazing project, or projects that you're working on, Cynthia. I want to ask you about that. Before I do a bit of housekeeping for this event and the following ones, I want to let you know, we forgot to tell you this, but of course it's important to turn off your phones. You can, I suppose, put them on airplane mode if you want to take photos or so, make sure that they're silenced. The second is I got some good news, which is that there will be two moments where you can say all you want to all your neighbors, which is we have a break after our second speaker, and we also, this is going to be amazing, we're going to have a reception at the end of the whole conference. And I think Cynthia will join us there, as will our next speakers. That's the good news. The bad news is, this is a wonderful room, full of marble from times gone by, but that also means that it's quite a loud room. So I'm gonna have to ask you, especially the people in the back and up front or on top, try to keep your voices down, because otherwise it's going to be hard for everyone else to listen. And then third, if you do want to say something during the conference itself, I guess there is actually an opportunity, because at the end of every speaker, we get questions from the audience. So make sure to think about what you want to ask now, and I'll come back to the audience in about 20 minutes. That's my housekeeping. Now back to Cynthia and the Innovation Foundation. Cynthia, first a few questions on the Innovation Foundation. I think that most of us will not have heard of the Innovation Foundation. I think, on the other hand, many people will have heard of Adecco. I want to do a quick polling to see who knows Adecco. Adecco? Yeah, so maybe about 20% of people here. Depending on which country you're from, it's actually very prevalent, including, for example, for students. One of the things that Adecco does is provide temporary employment, including for students. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
That is true. So actually, we're one of the 3 largest HR services companies in the world. We're in 60 countries. We've got 38,000 people. And we do offer temporary staffing, but that's only one slice of it. So, for example, I actually worked as an Adecco associate when I was just out of university before I went to grad school, and I needed a summer job. And so I signed up with them as a temporary employment agency, and I ended up answering phones and working for a couple of different companies, and it was a great experience. So it can be an excellent way to get some real-world experience in the world of work.
And in 60 countries around, is there actually anyone who had a similar experience? Has anyone worked as a temporary worker for or through Adecco? Anyone at all? Oh, in the back there. You want to say anything about that experience? You want to stand up and share? What have you done for Adecco? Hello, yeah, sure, why not? We'll see if we can get a microphone over to you. There we go, over there. Let's see if that rings true for you too.
Hi. Okay. I work for Amazon through Adecco. I worked for 4.5 months. I visited Adecco office, which is in Munich Central Station, near Munich Central Station. They were actually very good. Then when I went for my appointment, there were 2 ladies in the reception, and they gave me a very good brief about what my work is, what am I going to do in Amazon warehouse. I worked for 4.5 months, and from Adecco, they were very quick at giving responses to my emails and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I got very good feedback from them. And after my work was finished, it's temporary. So they gave me a feedback that they will gonna call me back if they need workforce, and if I need for a full-time job, they're gonna contact me because I gave my CV to them.
Yeah. That's amazing. You know, I think that, you know, if they don't yet have a PR representative in Munich, maybe we can ask you to become a PR representative for Adecco. But thank you for sharing that experience, and maybe we can get back to you. Thank you. Can back to you later in the session. Now, I have had the same experience. I also worked as a student through Adecco. So my first question for you is this, related to Innovation Foundation. If you have an amazing company that does amazing things like giving jobs to students and to, as you said, women and you know, anyone really in society, why do you need the Innovation Foundation?
So we went, when we set it up, we wanted to look for an unusual model that would provide a different kind of social impact. So you might know that the more traditional approach to a corporate foundation would be to give money to organizations that are doing work already. Sometimes there will be a corporate volunteering aspect to that. But what we were looking at was all of these unsolved problems that companies weren't going to put R&D money into because it wasn't going to make money fast enough. Government often didn't have the money or perhaps the know-how or the reach to do it. NGOs might see the problem but often don't have the resources to do it. So we thought, how could we actually be kind of a neutral platform to bring together all those players and basically put money into R&D that nobody else could do, that actually would have benefit for all of those stakeholders. So that's something that the foundation can do, that the company can't, but is complementary to what the company does.
I think they call that in academic circles sort of these wicked problems, these wicked business problems, things that are very hard to solve, but that can have a solution. It's just very complex and complicated. So now you say why you would do that. And then the next question is, of course, how do you do that? And you told us a little bit about your methodology, but maybe we can do a bit of a deeper dive in one of those examples that you gave. You said we chose Mexico as a country to work with, I believe there, was it?
Young mothers. With
young mothers to reintegrate them into the labor market. So, you know, again, maybe short, why that focus, and then how do you actually go about it?
Yeah. So often what we're looking at, and this is back to the idea of nexus, is what's the way in, what's the door opener, or the wedge, the lever you can use in a small way that will create big impact. So in this case, we started with the topic of youth, and youth is gigantic, right? So we started with youth, and then we have our own methodology where we narrowed down from youth to those who are NEET, which is not in employment, education, or training, living at or below the poverty line, living on the urban fringe, because the needs of people on the urban fringe are often overlooked. You get programs that are for rural or programs that are for urban, but there's kind of this missing slice there. Then we looked at when is the danger zone? So in most countries, you can leave school at age 16. But if you fall out of the whole system between, say, 16 and 24, the chances that you're going to get back in are very low, and the chances that you are going to fulfill your ultimate earning power over the course of your working life are also really low. So basically, if you miss that window, then you're already at a big disadvantage. So then we thought, okay, what is an extreme use case? Because back to the idea of margins and nexuses is if you solve for the needs of the extreme use case, what works for them will work for others.
Right.
So, okay, young mothers are more extreme. They are often socially excluded. They're often at a financial disadvantage. They might not have other kind of safety net around them. And when we found in Mexico, and this is on the outskirts of Mexico City, they were very far from work because a lot of these girls may not have anyone in their immediate surroundings who's in formal work. So if you take kind of an extreme case, then you can work back toward the middle. And we thought with Mexico, that what works in Mexico would work in other middle-income countries, would work potentially in other LATAM countries with some tailoring as well. And then what works for young mothers would work for other mothers, other parents, other people with caring responsibilities, other young people. So the idea is you build it once, and then you can scale it in a bunch of different directions.
That's amazing. Now, so that's a wonderful example of how you then do it and why you do it in that particular case. I guess the next question is from a business point of view, because it's still a business that's, can you say that they're investing Adecco or they are enabling it? How do you call it?
That's a good question. So one of the key caveats of what we do is that we can't be building things directly for the Adecco group. Because we're a not-for-profit entity, and because ultimately we have to focus on the needs of society, we can't be doing R&D for the group.
Right.
So what we do is we look for things where we can leverage the know-how of the group, but build it actually so that it will go out into the world via someone else. So in the case of the young mothers in Mexico, we built two things. I mentioned a social campaign. In that case, we have now handed over the social campaign to one of the partners with whom we built it. And so this is actually an NGO network called Youth Build, and they are global. So we built with Youth Build Mexico, but then we can scale it through Youth Build. And then we built the tech solution with a tech startup, and then that continues with them as the suite of things that they offer. They are also a social enterprise. So now what we've got is this lovely partnership of Youth Build Mexico and Skill Lab, the tech company. So we have handed over the model to them. They will take it forward. They take the front seat. We take the back seat. After the first year of spin-off, then we won't be funding it anymore, and they will have set it up as a sustainable model, marrying their two business models. And then we'll see where it goes beyond that.
Now, I suppose for those of us who follow a little bit how business interacts with not-for-profit, this is, sort of an internal discussion. What is the role of not-for-profit for a company, not just legally, but also just in terms of why is it worthwhile for a business, and when does it become really more PR than actually what it is intended to do? So, where have you landed on that balance? Is it then that you say these projects ultimately will make business sense, but they will make business sense outside, as you said, of the Adecco Group and outside of the Innovation Foundation? Or do you really not care about whether or not they start to make money at some point?
That's an excellent question, because ultimately it's about sustainability. So it doesn't mean that it has to make money. It just means that it has to be financially sustainable. So in this case, with Skill Lab, because that becomes part of their business model, they can make money from it, and we have no problem with that. With Youth Build Mexico, what they can do is use this as a way to attract more people to their own programs and therefore get more funding through their traditional funding streams. What we're more interested in is how do we take each new project. So you saw on that slide, there was one also about women back to work, one about mature workers. We want to test out different ways of spinning things off. So now we've tried, okay, what happens when you spin it off into an NGO network or into a tech startup? The next one we're trying with Women Back to Work is we will probably stand this up as its own tech startup. So we'll actually set up a company and then see if it can thrive on its own once it's outside the Adecco group. And it might be that for mature workers, we do something that could be a partnership between an NGO, a government, and a corporate. So we're agnostic as to what form it takes, as long as it actually gets to the people who need it. But we need these use cases.
Right. And so that's what you're working on. I mean, it's endlessly fascinating. I learned already a lot from your presentation and, of course, the questions we went through today. But one of the questions I have for you, Cynthia, is why do you work on these challenges? What brought you to want to solve these kinds of socio-economic global problems? What drives Cynthia Hansen?
I think it's back to that idea of nexus and red thread. So I spent the last 25 years of my career working in different sectors. So working in public-private partnership, I worked for a private consulting firm, I worked in the not-for-profit sector, and then World Economic Forum, which is kind of in between all of those. What I wanted was an opportunity to pull all of those things together. So basically pull the assets, the money, the clout of business with the influence of government, with the grassroots bottom-up understanding of civil society, and be able to play across all of those. So I had a wonderful boss, Piers Cumberledge, you would know him at the farm, who talked about the triathlete is the way of the future. So what you need is people who can easily move across government, business, civil society, academia, who can speak the language, who can bring people in, who can appeal to what people want, and then use that to then create change. And so this is what drives me. It's like, how do you pull all those threads together and use it to make something better than any one actor could do alone? And this, right now, this is my dream job. This is what I love doing.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and also I love that image, don't you, of the triathlete. So somebody who in their careers will have done different things in different sectors, the public sector, the private sector, NGOs, and so on, government perhaps, and then is able to work on these big systemic challenges that we all know about, but that perhaps at this point in our careers we're like, how do you even get started on solving those things? And clearly you found a way to do that. Now, of course, another aspect of that, if we go back into your career, I suppose, is that at some point, maybe, and it's a question to you, at some point, maybe it wasn't so clear what the common thread was. You know, you work in a private consulting firm, you work for the US State Department, you end up with the World Economic Forum, all wonderful things in their own right, but maybe at that point, not yet so clear, oh, this is going to come back into being a triathlete, solving systemic challenges. Were you ever worried about that? That, you know, you didn't know where your career was headed? And then how did you find the comfort and the confidence that, yes, this all makes sense?
There were lots of times when I wasn't sure what was going to happen, which is actually really important learning, I think, for everybody, is you're not locked into what you're doing right now. You can always pivot, you can always change. So I had actually a moment when I had been teaching in Japan, on the JET program, and my plan was I was going to go back to the States, I was going to go to grad school, get a PhD, and then teach comparative literature. And I thought I had it all planned out.
That was the plan.
That was my plan.
Long time ago, but
yeah,
that was...
long time ago, that was my plan. I applied to the programs that I wanted, and I didn't get in. And then it was like, oh my God, I have to do something else. And that was actually a great opportunity to then reflect, was that really what I wanted? And would I have been happy? Would I have been productive? Would I have been helping people? So that actually started to craft, for me, this ability to reflect on what do I like, what do I not like, what works for me, where can I add value? And so what I've tried to do at each time I've done a pivot, whether it was changing countries or changing cities or changing organizations, is to stop and look at what do I like about what I've been doing? What do I not like about what I've been doing? What suits me? What else could I learn? And then that has helped me figure out what that red thread is through my whole career. So the last time I did that big reevaluation was when I was looking to leave the World Economic Forum. And it was really about what is the red thread through my career. And it's really about either startup, turnaround, scale up. And so when I look back now, I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back at all those different steps in my career, that was the common thread.
Startup, scale up, turnaround. And it sounds so great, right? I mean, it sounds, wow, amazing. Like, if I can put that on my CV, I'm a startup, scale-up, turnaround specialist. It's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. But it took you a while to realize that's it. That's who I am. That's what I do. And then the other thing you mentioned, which I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about, I think we all have sort of these difficult moments sometimes where we have a dream and then the dream doesn't come to fruition. It doesn't happen. And sometimes it's particularly hard when it's outside of your own ability to do something about it. Somebody else had to accept you for the program that you applied to. They didn't do that. You still have that dream. You said something to me a while ago where you said, you know, at that moment when my dreams, let's say, were shattered, I realized that a setback could be turned, or that I could turn a setback into an amazing opportunity. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you came to that sort of insight? Because I think it can be valuable for all of us along the way if we ever experience a setback.
So I think it's really about learning the skills of self-reflection, and then this isn't something you learn once, it's something that you have to exercise again and again, and it's really about reframing. So there might be something that was a devastating setback, but if you actually think about it differently and you reframe it, it can be something that's incredibly valuable. And I think that the parallel piece to that people really struggle with is the idea of comfort with ambiguity. So I think I've been talking about this a lot with my team. There is a huge difference between being flexible, somebody tells me to do something different and I can just change tack and go do that thing, versus being really comfortable with ambiguity where you don't know exactly what the end result is going to look like. But you have your North Star, you know what direction you're going, you know the way in general that you're going to get there, but you've got pretty wide guardrails. And so you can just trust the system and trust the process and know that you're going to get there. And so that also takes the pressure off. It's not going exactly the way I thought, or I didn't anticipate that, or I didn't get that external validation. If you know where you're going, then you can be okay with that. And then you can just learn to flex along the way because you know you're still going in the direction that you want.
Yeah, it sounds good. I hope we can all do that when the moment is there. It sounds good in theory, but I suppose it's a little tough. But we take comfort in the fact that you were able to do that, and then that means that probably many of us will be able to do that. Maybe one final question, and I want to turn to the audience. I think we can all hear that you're American, and we know that you're American, but you've told us about your career, which has taken place for a big part here in Europe, and also of your studies, which were in Asia. Could you tell us a little bit about your global journey, across cultures, and how you were able to sort of adjust to building a career in all kinds of different countries and cultures?
Sure. So yes, I am American. I actually was born in Korea and adopted to the US. So I grew up in a family that was not a traditional white American family. There is no traditional American family. But my parents are white, my sister is black. It's a super multicultural.
You could be on those ads of Benetton or sure Ralph Lauren, I suppose.
Yeah. And then, yes, so I spent some of my education in the US, also the UK, also in Asia. And I think what I learned was the ability to listen and to really get to the heart of what people are saying and what the underlying needs are. And this goes back also to design thinking. Design thinking is all based on empathy and understanding the underlying needs and solving for the right thing. So I think that's really what has carried me through building this international career, is to not come with immediate problem solving. I know how to do this, let's just take action and go, but rather take the time, listen to people, spend a lot of time hearing what people have to say without creating judgment. And actually that is, I think, the key that will cut across any cultural norms, any of the visible structures when you move from place to place. It's really about human connections and listening and asking the right questions and taking all of that in before you take action, before you make judgment.
Maybe one final follow-up on that, because you may know, but most of the people in the room here are probably not in their home country today, right? They come from all over the world, and they're now in Germany, and their career might be in Germany. It could also be in another country in Europe, and could be another country in the world. So if you had to give sort of one advice about the first time that you do that, the first time that as a professional you go abroad, or an anecdote, what would it be?
I would say leave your assumptions at the door. Probably all the assumptions that you make are going to be wrong, and there will be all kinds of things that you never thought of that are going to bubble up. So I think the best thing you can do is just go with a truly open mind, and I would say, it sounds a bit cheesy, but really an open heart as well, because that allows you to really connect with people and see what the opportunities are and see where you can add value.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your listening so far. Now, I want to make sure that we take a few questions from you for Cynthia. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I've got one here and one there, and then we'll come with the mic over to you, and then one person over there. So let's start with those 3 questions, and the mic, I suppose, is slowly coming our way. Okay, we'll take it from the back and we'll work our way forward. If you can please say your name, what you're studying, and then ask your question.
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Cynthia and Peter. My name is Wakar. I'm one of the MBA students here. Cynthia, it's wonderful to have the Innovation Foundation as one of the many in the universe of foundations out there. It sounds truly disruptive. What's your definition of impact? And I don't want to hear about the impact that works in the boardroom back at Zurich. What's the impact that works in Mexico, and sort of metrics that we as students here in this room could understand, please?
Thank you so much.
Impact is incredibly hard to measure, and there are years and years and reams of research about this. We've struggled with this a lot. So ultimately, we're going for systems change. We've got a theory of change. At the top of we use the pyramid-shaped one. So at the top of our theory of change is that underserved populations will have better access to the world of work. And the 2 key things that need to change in that are people need to be more empowered, and they need to be part of the system, and the ecosystems need to change to be more enabling. So we've boiled this down to several metrics that we think will cut across all of our projects. One is reach versus scale, because there is a tendency to just go for reach. How many people did you reach with that campaign? How many people signed up for your program? Reach doesn't mean that you changed anybody's life. So what we are calling conversion is actually levels of conversion. So somebody saw a campaign. Level 1 conversion is you went into that platform and you created a profile. Level 2 would be, you went through one of the assessments. Level 3 might be you actually then took the initiative to sign up for a class and you finished that class, or you got a mentor, or you did a work experience. And then level 4 would be on and on. So ultimately to maybe getting a job. That what we are working on right now is what are the right metrics that will work, say, in Mexico, and will work in Spain and the UK and Germany and wherever else we go. But right now, that model of reach versus conversion, we believe will reach across that. The other piece is around partnership. And the kinds of partnerships and the quality of the partnerships that we create. And then the other thing that people generally don't measure is what are the secondary partnerships. So for example, in the Women Back to Work project, in the working group, we had this fantastic organization that specifically helps mothers in the UK to get off of unemployment and back into work. And then we had someone from the UK government. And they didn't know each other. They connected, and now they're in talks about could they do something together. We'd love to be able to capture those secondary collaborations, because that's part of how you create the exponential and the ultimately scalable impact.
That's amazing. So in summary, it's about conversion, partnerships and secondary partnerships. I think that's a wonderful way of looking at it. Thank you for that. And then we had a question a little bit further down here on this side, and then yes, there we go.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I'm Jacques van Rensburg. I come from South Africa. My background is in political science and international studies, and I'm currently working with one of my former lecturers in South Africa on building a new thinking science called interdisciplinary thinking, a complete opposite to interdisciplinary thinking. Something that pushed me onto the path of this is my introduction to systems thinking, which really helped me innovate within my passions and finally understand the world in the way that I see it. So I'm curious, since you've mentioned a lot of thinking systems yourself, how has introduction to thinking systems changed the way you work with things and see things and analyze things throughout your career? Thank you.
Thanks. Actually, I love systems thinking.
Thank you. Oh wow, sure, yeah, go ahead.
Great,
this is great.
yeah.
We're back. You know, we're back in person.
Yeah.
So I think the enthusiasm is warranted.
like
But
that.
go ahead, Cynthia.
Yeah. No. So we're really careful within the Innovation Foundation not to be dogmatic about any particular methodology. So we use systems thinking really prevalently. We use design thinking, we use agile, and then we use bits and pieces of other things as well. What I like about systems thinking is I often explain it to people like a spider web. So everything is connected. If you pull something over here, you have to think about the 50 other things that are going to move. And that's often what is not considered. So we do a lot of looking at unintended consequences, scenario planning as well. So you think about if we, for example, with the young mothers, if we empower young mothers and they go back to work, there are examples from other countries about what happens when you empower women and they go back to work. You often see a rise in domestic violence. Sometimes you see a rise in child abuse. Sometimes you see a rise in divorce. So things like that you might not otherwise think about because it's very easy to be reductive and say, oh, isn't it great that more women have work? So I think systems thinking is incredibly helpful. So I'm glad that you're using it.
That's amazing. And I know that for some others, maybe this is the first time that they've heard about it. These are incredibly powerful theories, systems thinking, design thinking, others. But it does take a little bit of education. We won't be able to talk about everything, but we got a nice introduction from the question and the answer. And then I think there was a final question over here, if I'm not mistaken, if we can still get to that. Yep, over there, if we can get the microphone. Sorry to make you do some extra exercise, but we're going to get there.
Yep, thank you very much. I'm Anton. I'm currently a bachelor student of tourism, and I have a couple of questions about the company. So what are your future projects and a plan of Innovation Foundation? And also you mentioned that a government can be also a partner of the company. So have you ever had the arguments with the state laws when you just were implementing the campaigns? And which tools that would be really interesting you implement for the analysis?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And you know, you made sure that we didn't get 3 questions from 3 students, but 3 additional questions. We'll see if we'll get to it, because we're trying to be German in our approach here and stick to the time.
On the time.
But go ahead.
Okay. Quickly, in terms of the projects that we have, so the other 2 projects that are live are Women Back to Work, which is about mid-skill, low-skill women returning to work. Interestingly, that's actually focused on the hospitality industry right now, because hospitality lost a lot of people, has a need, because you have to be meeting a business need, and that could be an entry point for women coming back to work. The 3rd project is on older workers, 55 plus, and then we're using our methodology, we're looking at the other trends and who is likely to be excluded from work in the future. So we've looked at things like neurodiversity, we've looked at ethnic minorities, we've looked at indigenous youth, we've looked at people coming out of incarceration. So we just need to figure out where is a target audience that would have enough in common with the others so that it would be scalable. And then in terms of how we do the research, we have our own research methodology, our own research team, and then we work in partnership with lots of others. So we use a lot of different tools. We can talk about that separately if you want, to do that analysis. And a lot of it is trying to craft our own way of doing it, because not all of the existing tools are really fit for purpose for what we're trying to do.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Well, and with that, time flies. We have already come to the end of our Learning for Leaders with Cynthia. So I want to make sure that we go to our second speaker, but before we do, I want to thank one final time Cynthia Hansen of the Innovation Foundation. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is absolutely great. And, you know, I've got some good news for all of us, including myself, but also for you, because I can see that our next speaker is still sitting right here. And you might think, well, that's normal. He's supposed to be here. But he actually told me, Peter, if you are too rough on Cynthia, I will run away and I will no longer be here. So I think we did a good job so far, both myself and all of you who asked the question, because Bjarne is still here and he's our next guest. Bjarne, I'm going to do an effort at not butchering your name, but I think I might still butcher your name. Bjarne Lykke Sørensen, more or less okay. Bjarne is, as you might guess, he comes from Denmark. He is also in Denmark today, the CEO of Siemens. Now, Siemens is actually a company that's based here, right here in Bavaria. Its top people, the global CEO, the executive team are all based in Munich. And Bjarne, you know, he loves his company, absolutely amazing company, but he also loves his country, because he told me Siemens is the biggest company, you know, in all of Bavaria. It is the biggest global company in this part or in this region. It's the second biggest global company from Germany, but in Denmark, we actually still have bigger companies than that. So we're going to hear all about, about Siemens and about Bjarne. I want to welcome our second speaker, Bjarne Lykke Sørensen, on the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the introduction.
That's a good way to get started. Bjarne, if you want to take a seat, you may. If you want to keep standing, we can also stand.
Oh, okay. It's okay.
We'll take a seat.
Here, yes. And then first of all, thank you for the invitation, because some of the most enjoyable thing about having my job here is when you have a chance to interact with students, you know. And so I'm so excited about this. And
yeah, and we're going to, of course, have a lot of time with you, and we'll also have a lot of time with you afterwards. I think you'll stay with us for the reception, so we'll make sure to ask you all the questions we can now, and then we'll keep the others for later. Bjarne, I want to start with just an introduction to Siemens, because, you know, I think I may not have done it full justice in describing Siemens. Siemens is this huge company. It's an enormous industrial conglomerate. And, you know, I might date myself now, but I actually know Siemens from its mobile phones and its computers. Now, by the looks on people's faces, I can tell that a lot of people will be like, what are you talking about? We don't know Siemens from mobile phones and computers, because I don't think that you actually still make PCs and mobile phones. So tell us a little bit about what it is that Siemens is, and maybe start with the products or services that people that are young today would know, rather than people that are clearly a little bit too old already.
Thanks, Peter, and it'll take some time. So no, you're actually right that we are not there anymore, and let me explain what Siemens is actually doing. And we have different businesses, and let us start with the businesses that is smart infrastructure. And smart infrastructure is that, you know, building management system, which is controlling a building, the heat, ventilation, air condition, but it's also about charging infrastructure for electrical cars. It could be to build the grid. So it's the infrastructure part, and that is one of the businesses. Then we have another business, Digital Industries, which is doing automation and digitalization for manufacturing. And there we actually also very well positioned, and I think I'll come a little bit back to that, talking about digitalization in this area. Then we have mobility. Mobility is a train business where we can deliver.
You make trains, right?
Trains, exactly, yes.
I think we might know Siemens from, if you look closely in a train, you might see that it's a Siemens train.
Yeah, exactly. We are big there, and it's not only the train, it's also infrastructure around it. It means it's electrification, the digitalization of that part. Then we're probably also well known for the healthcare part, the health and ears. which is very much diagnostic areas like CT
scan.
and MR scanners. You're totally right. See, you know that a
Yes,
lot.
yeah, no, it's true.
So you're doing super good, Peter, until now.
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Yeah. And then also actually somebody also knows us for the Siemens Energy, but Siemens Energy, there is Siemens AG. Our core is only a minority shareholder in Siemens Energy, but Siemens Energy is very active in the energy area, also by the way in wind turbines and this area.
So
and then coming back
more.
To,
there's more.
and then coming back to your little thing about this, that what about this telecommunication business? I think it's so nice because it tells a lot about change. Because Siemens, in 1847, when Werner von Siemens started Siemens, it actually started with telegraph, which is telecommunication.
Oh, wow.
So you can say the beginning of the company was actually telecommunication or the telegraph
and
at that time.
And it stayed active in that field
until 20 years ago.
Oh,
until
wow.
20 years ago, Siemens totally stepped out of telecommunication, and it's actually a nice, interesting change story. We always talk about change, and you know, it doesn't matter to be big, it's a question about how fast you can change. And I think that's, and you come into an area and then you end up doing something else, yeah.
Well, I have to say, you know, it's impressive all the things you do now, you know, the trains, the buildings, the manufacturing, but if you're talking about speed of change, and you just told us that the company was founded in the 1840s. Then if my memory serves me right, it took you 160 years to get out of the telecom business. So that's, I suppose, not a quick change.
No, you don't think that, okay? Somebody agreeing with Peter?
So, yeah, so what, I mean, but on the other hand, you've been around for 180 years, which is completely incredible. So clearly, change has to be part of the DNA of the company. How do you live that? How does that translate into what you do? Is what you do today not what you're going to be doing in 5 years? Is it not what you did 5 years ago? I mean, how do you deal with all that change?
Peter, you're totally right that things are changing a lot. And I think I would say what is actually the core of what Siemens is doing, and that is combining the real and the digital world. And there the development is going super fast. And in Siemens, we actually have developed, and we launched it 2 years ago, actually here in Munich, where we had our industrial metaverse, the Siemens Industrial Metaverse. We call it Siemens Accelerator, which is an open digital business platform. And what does that actually consist about? Because all of this is, there is AI element into it, we'll come back to that. There's the digital twin, and there is software-based automation.
Okay, I gotta stop you right there, because when you use the word digital twin, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I mean, like, it sounds to me almost like when you're 5 years old and you have an imaginary friend. What is a digital twin?
Yeah, it's a good question, because let us say you want to develop a new aircraft, an airplane. And then in the old days, you know, you had to build a model of it, and you have to find out, was it good at flying or was it not good at flying, and this. Now you can do it in a Siemens software, you know, where you build your flight, you can simulate it, you can test it, you can fly with it. Then you can say, okay, is this really working? And then at the same time, you can also make a digital twin of your manufacturing, your plant where you're going to produce your aircraft in. And then you can see, okay, can I really produce this one? Can I simulate how it will be for the workers to be there so we have good working conditions? How will it actually be for the robots who shall do it? So the digital twin is, you know, this process where you are designing both your products and your manufacturing, and nearly all products today is actually made this way, where you have a digital twin.
But I mean, then I suppose it sounds to me, and again, I might again show how old I am, but then it sounds to me almost like Second Life or The Sims, you know, like these games, these computer games where you create a totally second world, really, a parallel world, in which everything that can happen in the real world can also happen there, but it's all fully online. Is that then what it is?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Because let us say you have made this excellent aircraft, and then it's flying afterwards. Then you can get data back, Internet of Things, and then you can use that to update your digital twin, so you are able to produce an even better aircraft tomorrow. So you're totally right and you can actually sometimes discuss, I actually here in my pocket, I have an iPhone. And I have an Apple ID where I have a copy, a digital twin of that one. And then you can sometimes start to discuss what is actually the real one. Is it the physical one, or is it the digital twin, which is the important one?
Right.
And I would say it's a digital twin that is the important one, because that's the real one, because this here is just a copy. And if I throw this one out, I buy a new one, and then I actually can re-establish it. So the digital twin is really the core of everything.
It's really where R&D happens, where the future is built. I don't know, but I don't know if you all read about this because you talked about aircraft. The Airbus or it was the Boeing accident where sort of a plane actually didn't function as intended. Is that then the kind of things that you would be able to prevent if you used digital twin software?
Yeah, it's a good example that you are able to simulate all kind of situations and see, hey, what will happen if this happens, or this and this wind and all these things. But there's one thing more I want to add, because I said we combined the real and the digital world.
Yes.
Because I told at the beginning of this one that you design your airplane, but then you start to make, okay, I'm going to produce it. I'm going to make it real.
And then you're also going to do that.
Exactly. As 1/3 of all PLCs, which is the intelligence in a factory, programmable logic control, is made by Siemens. 1/3, 1 out of 3.
In the world?
In the world, yes. So that means that if you look into a factory, we are the one who making this digital into the real world as well.
So it means that even though we might know Siemens from when we're lying under a scan in a hospital, or we might know Siemens from looking at the brand of a train, the real big businesses that Siemens has are the ones that we probably don't know about unless we operate a building, unless we work in a factory, unless we work in R&D in a huge company. Is that sound right?
Yeah, I think you're right that actually Siemens is everywhere, but it's difficult to see it because it could be the building management system, it could be in the production, it could be in this. And then, by the way, many of you probably don't know that Siemens is among the 10 biggest software companies in the world. So we're really strong in that area.
Now, you've clearly, I think, convinced many of us, at least me, that what you're doing is very, very valuable in the 21st century today and going forward. Now, when I follow the media, and I do, and I think all of us do, we read almost exclusively when it comes to technology nowadays, we read about AI. That's right. We read about AI, about artificial intelligence. See that?
That's also super cool.
How does Siemens think about AI? Does Siemens have Siemens AI? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, actually, and it was a great start. We was a little bit around this digital twin and also this PLC, because how we are using AI is actually that we, for example, creating a co-pilot. So when you're going to program your PLCs and this, then with the generative AI, you get help to program it. And I think that's really great, because that takes us another place where, just 5 years ago, you said there will be two kinds of people in the future, the one who can do programming and the one who cannot. But now with the help of generative AI, you just tell, what do you actually want, how do I want to do it, and then the programming will be done for you. So
that's what we've heard, right? Yeah. That's what the promise of generative AI is.
Exactly. It will be a great help for you. And then what I really like about it is also that in this world, we have a partnership with Microsoft, we have a partnership with Amazon AWS, and by the way, also with Sony, which is helping us in this world to creating virtual lens and this kind of stuff. So you get this connection between the digital world and the real world. And AI is helping in this one.
You keep on mentioning companies that I know from their mobile phones, by the way. Sony, Microsoft. This is what, so you're working with AI today, obviously.
Yes, we do, yeah.
Tell us a little bit, and by the way, we're going to talk later on with Stiene Riemer, who works at BCG, the consulting firm, and who works on how companies implement AI. But now we've got a great example of a company that's actually doing that.
Yeah, and then one example is actually, if somebody is having some time, later today or something is that our group CEO, which actually have an office very close here, Roland Busch, if you go into YouTube and actually say Roland Busch AI, and then he was in Las Vegas in the CES fair giving a speech about this, a very good speech where he actually explains how is Siemens actually using AI. So just a hint, if you have some time, then
have a look.
Have a look.
Now, you mentioned early on in our conversation, I don't know if you all remember, I'm going to try to do that the big divisions are Siemens Buildings, Siemens Manufacturing, Siemens Mobility, Siemens Energy, and Siemens Health. I hope my memory still works.
Yeah, and Siemens Energy, we only minority.
And minority. Yeah. Will AI for you be in the future another of those divisions, or will it be part of all of those divisions?
It'll be a part of all of these divisions. Because, you know, generative AI is really one who can make it more easy for our customers to use it. This example with the co-pilot. Another example is that Siemens was having a company named Mendix, which we was buying some years ago, which is making low-code software, to making more easy to do coding. And there we also now apply AI, so it gets even more easy to do coding. So it will be helping our customers and us. So it is not like you will have some new business coming up. This is going to be applied in the businesses.
Yeah. How do you use AI? You as a person, do you use ChatGPT to prepare for your presence here? Do you use it to ask where to go on vacation, or do you have other uses for it yourself?
Yes. Actually, I use it, and in Siemens we actually have our own version of it. Because sometimes the problem is if you use ChatGPT and you ask questions, then afterwards the system is also learning. So perhaps you will also be giving it to your competition. So we actually have our own system. And
who developed it? That's also
but you know it's still going into the ChatGPT and this, but you know it's a little bit more closed environment, so to speak, because we want to be sure that we can control it. And there I often do. I had an example. I was out to meet a CEO for a big Danish company in the dairy industry, the food and beverage industry. And so I'm thinking, I was sitting doing my presentation, then say, okay, what will actually be the answer? What is the cool stuff to talk about in this dairy and this food and bev industry? And then you ask, you know, and you get so many interesting questions. Wow, okay, that's cool. How can I actually apply that?
So the discovery element of generative AI is one that you tap into yourself.
Yeah.
I want to come back one more time to this idea of change in a company, and particularly how you decide as a company. You know, now you said why you're playing in real life and digital twins, and why that's relevant because of digitization and automation. You've also told us how you're starting to integrate AI and why. But how do you decide as a company when it's time to change? That you have to adopt a new technology, or that maybe you have to stop doing something like eventually you did with telecom? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think also that if you look into the history now I was telling that Siemens was not in telecommunication, but there's also other areas where we have changed our business model, and I think coming a little bit back to what we said in the beginning, that what you even as a big company, you know, you really need to be aware all the time. Where's the technology? Are we on the right platform? And sometimes you also have to ask yourself, you know, is then we the best owner for this, and how are we going to develop it? And it is amazing. I have been in Siemens like 30 years. So I started when I was 10 years old. And
you still had a Siemens phone then, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we had that some years. Yeah. And there I can just see, you know, how much it's actually changing all the time, the product offerings, and especially I think it's been going very fast the last year with digitalization. Now you mentioned AI.
Yeah. Is it something that as, you know, students, as young people who start their careers, is it something that we should be excited about or scared about? That there is this constant change and that every year there's something new?
No, I think you should not be scared for it. And if you take AI as a good example, I think that I don't think that anybody in here will be substituted by AI. But if you don't use AI, you have a risk to be substituted with somebody who uses AI.
Right.
And I think that puts it a little bit into it. And I also think now I mentioned the example that 5 years ago we were talking about that we end in a world where somebody can do programming, somebody cannot do programming. And now suddenly with the generative AI, we can democratize that. So everybody, if you tell what you want, you can actually do the programming. So there's many good...
And we can adapt to it as we build our careers. That's also encouraging for me, by the way. By now you've understood that I'm sometimes stuck in the past. I maybe want to ask a question to the audience, just to see actually how often that we here as a collective, that we actually are already using generative AI. So I might just ask, and then I want to ask you some personal questions, Bjarne. I might just ask, I'll give you 4 options, okay? Whether you use generative AI like ChatGPT, DALL-E, and other programs, whether you use it almost every day, whether you would use it about once a week, about once a month, or almost never, okay? So let's just see, and by the way, you can participate, Bjarne. So, you know, we're gonna put our hands up. Who uses generative AI applications almost every day? Okay, that's about a quarter. Who uses it? You're one of them, I'm gonna ask you about that. Who uses it about once a week or so? About the same number, I would say. Mm-hmm. Who uses it, you know, about every month, you know, every couple of months? That would be me, okay? So thank you guys, I'm not alone. And who almost never uses it? Almost no one. One person in the back there, I'm curious if you want to tell us about that. How's life there?
But by the way, it's super difficult not to use it, because you know it's getting built into all your software products. You know, if you use Microsoft or other, then it's in there. You know, and it's all over.
I wanna maybe just ask one person in the room before we get to the part 2 of our conversation, Bjarne. A person that says that they use it almost every day. If you can just share with us what you do with AI. We've got a person right there. If we can bring the mic over here.
Yeah.
Nice, okay. And once we hear who you are, we're going to clap for you, but we first got to find out, of course.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Valery Weber. I'm a student of UBS in the bachelor degree, and I use AI every day, and actually I program it myself, so I use different types of AI. One is the ChatGPT that I use for some code creation, and also I use AI for creating images. And yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Now I gotta say, I gotta say I clap, but I'm also now really afraid, okay? Because if the one person that we pick is somebody who actually programs AI, then I'm even more stressed about my own future because I barely even use it, let alone how to program it. So maybe one more person. Let's hear one more person. Anyone who just wants to share how they use AI over there. Just we'll bring the mic over to you. And I'm praying to the gods that it's something like I can identify with.
My name is Jana. I'm studying information systems at this university.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of the technical programs at this university. And I'm working with AI, especially with ChatGPT, and my company where I'm working, I'm doing software engineering. And we have our own AI. So I cannot share all the stuff we are doing with it, but yeah, it helps in coding a lot. Also, it helps in making some documentation, translation, and requirements for programmers. So it's really interesting. Yeah, but I think that's a great opportunity for us, but I feel like we need more policies in usage.
More, sorry, what?
Policies in the usage. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it didn't help me, but I suppose we just know that this is a future-ready group. What do you use AI for? When you said every day almost you use it. You talked about one example, but what do you use?
Yeah, one example was this: when I have to meet with customers or people, I want to have this feedback, because sometimes you have your own ideas and then you get ChatGPT like answer on it. And then I must also say, we talked about it earlier today, that a lot of this with the language thing, we actually already use generative AI probably every day, all of us, when we ask, oh, hey, how is that actually working and how is that in a foreign language? Because a lot of them is also today controlled by generative AI.
That's amazing. I do want to say, though, and I'm going to claim that you were a little bit like me, because you guys can't see it probably from afar, but I can. You're actually wearing an 80s watch from Casio or something like that. So, so there is clearly some room for traditional things, I suppose. Bjarne, let me ask you a few personal questions now. You said that you've been with Siemens for a long time and clearly a very successful career. But how did you choose your career, and how did you choose Siemens ultimately?
That's really a good question. Have somebody in here heard about existentialism? Sartre from French, there's some hands there. Kierkegaard from Denmark, perhaps also. It's this thinking that you can understand your life backwards, but the problem is all of us have to live it forwards.
Right.
And that all our life is actually, every day we take some choices, and then we say, okay, shall we go this way or this way? And our life is actually this big choices we do every day, which actually in the end of the day will create our life. And and by the way, the thinking in this existentialism is that when you have taken one choice, then this choice will never come back. It's new choices you will get afterwards. So it means that if you choose to go to one company instead of another company, then these choices will then be different.
Sliding doors and you'll never know.
Exactly. And by the way, the problem about that is also a little bit tough, because the philosophy in existentialism is also that we actually create our own lives.
Right.
And that's a big responsibility to have. And when I think back, and when I went to high school many years ago, I was reading Kierkegaard and existentialism, and you get a little bit scared when you look into your life. And now when you look back and ask yourself, why did you end there? Then it's actually easy to see it. When I finished university, I was studying in Aarhus University, actually also a business school in Denmark. And then I went into Shell, the oil company, and worked there for some years. And then I got super interested in IT and building databases. A little bit boring, actually, but
Well, you've got some people here who are clearly
that is great to have somebody. I was really getting into making databases, and then there was a position in Siemens where we should build databases, actually in customer relationship management some years ago, where we wanted to come closer and have more control over what actually was the customer demands. And for me, it was like, yeah, I love that, because it's my IT with building databases, SQL-based, and then at the same time work with customers.
Right.
And that was where I started, and then I have done a million things.
A million things. I mean, it sounds, though, like, as you said, that sometimes you make choices just knowing who you are and what you want to do today. You said your start at Siemens was just a particular opportunity that you were particularly interested in at that time. In no way could you predict all of the things that followed afterwards, let alone that you would one day be CEO of the company in your own country.
No. And if you look back on it again, you can say that I worked here in Germany actually 4 years. Enjoyed it very much, and there you could also say you could also go the other direction. I choose to go back to Denmark and continue my career there. Something else could also have happened. And then actually, Peter, we had a good talk, because we was sharing a taxi here from the airport.
With Cynthia also.
Exactly, with Cynthia. And
Cynthia actually was 10 minutes behind us. That's right. We were here
we were missing her. Yeah.
With your former colleague.
Exactly, yes. And there we actually had this talk about, what actually do that you end where you end, and what is these choices you have got. And I think one of the most important is, if you are in a company, then sometimes you feel yourself you're ready to change. And then you need to have that the company also have an opportunity for that. So you have to somehow to have that over a period of time, that when you are ready, then the company is also ready. And that have to happen several times.
Right, and otherwise you would, of course, leave.
Probably, yes, exactly. Yeah. So that is why I stayed 30 years, because there was this match, and in other cases it could. By the way, I started in Shell and was there 7 years, right. And then some point in time there was something else. So
yeah, and so in another parallel world, in a digital twin world, maybe you would have stayed at Shell
Then perhaps I could have simulated my life in Shell. How cool would that be? You make a digital twin of you guys, and then you can simulate, you know.
See what would have happened. But I think you chose the right one because, you know, today people are clearly more excited about digitization, automation, artificial intelligence than about oil and gas. So in that sense, it worked out, but I guess you couldn't know that in advance because when you started out, there was no problem working in the oil and gas sector. It was an exciting opportunity. This was the biggest company or among the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah. And by the way, they still are.
Right.
They still are, and but you're right about that. I think now we have not talked so much about sustainability and the green transformation, where we in Siemens is playing a huge role. Actually, when I started in Shell in the beginning of the 90s, there was already coming the first report. I think it was Gro Brundtland who was sending out the report in '89 or something about that.
I mean, I got to tell you, I know what you're talking about, but if people didn't know about Siemens phones, they're not going to know about this report. But so it's the United Nations. Does anyone know? In '92, am I right?
I think that Gro Brundtland is 88
or even
89.
Earlier.
Yeah. Where you get the first report that we have a problem about raising temperatures because of too much CO2 emission.
And it was, and to be clear, you were at that time, you were at Shell? Or
no,
you
I was not there yet. I was not there yet.
So, but at that time, can you imagine this? At that time, in '89, the idea that oil and gas
was a problem
was groundbreaking. In other words, at any time before that, people didn't really have a clue about that.
Spot on.
So it just goes to show that over the course of your life, you have seen the change in our knowledge and then, of course, our actions on sustainability.
Yeah, and it's interesting, also a little bit scary actually, that we sit here now 35 years later, and we have still not done as much as we should do, and that is, we in societies and in companies really have to speed up, but it is actually pretty old knowledge that there was a problem.
I know that Siemens does things on that too, but I guess we'll talk about that another time. I want to, now that we have still the time with you, and we're going to get to student questions in a little bit, I want to ask you about this very remarkable thing that you also shared, which is that if we were in this room when you were a student, that actually we would have been in the room with not just you as CEO of Siemens Denmark, but also with the chairman of Siemens, with the former CEO of SAP, with the former CEO of Maersk, which is a very large shipping company.
Not him, no.
And, well, Jim was also the chairman.
Yeah, Jim, it's right, you're right about that. You're right about that.
Same person.
Yeah. The chairman also.
And the CEO of Novo Nordisk, which is the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. Which is to say that when you were a student, in your class, there were several people like you. It was not just you. There was also a CEO of another big global company. There was a chairman of a big global company. That sounds amazing, that at that time, you had so many future leaders. Did you know that? Did you feel like you were part of a special generation, or were you all just doing what we all do, which is to say, you know, we come to a conference every once in a while, but probably we also go have a beer and have a good time?
Yeah, it is such a good question, and we ended up talking about that because it comes a little bit back to this. Can you actually see when you're young sitting here, you know, who will actually develop into being a CEO? And it's correct. As I said, I was from Aarhus University. I have a Master of Science in Economics and Business Administration, and at that time where I actually also graduated, at the same year, you know, we had this, the CEO for Novo Nordisk, which is, by the way, the biggest company in Europe, with
incredible,
distance. Yeah. Incredible, yes. And then also Jim Hammond. And by the way, Jim was actually there if you had a problem with your IT. You could go down to him because he was actually one of the guys that was hired by the university to help the other guys if there was a problem with it. So he was there, yeah. And then you can say it's pretty amazing out of such a year. And then there's other universities in Denmark than Aarhus University. So but I was honestly, I think we also talked about it. I think it's super difficult to know who is actually the one,
and how,
and how is it, and there's probably, I think, if I look into my own career, I would say there is also this element of chance in it, like coming back to Kierkegaard, that you make so many choices, and I would guess if you take anybody who have done a career, there's this, you could have gone this way, and this, and if you have done that, you have not been there, but perhaps you have been another place you don't know.
Yeah. Now, we also talked about this idea, because you've, of course, accomplished a lot and gotten far in your career. Now you mentioned the aspect of luck, right? Mm-hmm. Which obviously, luck is something that happens to us without us being able to affect it.
Yeah.
But you also talked about some other aspects. And you said one of the things, if you think about what is it that we have in common with the people that actually succeeded, you said it's determination, it's grit, it's sort of, always going for it. Could you tell us a little bit more about that aspect, how you have that and how you see that in others?
Yeah, we had the talk also there, it's of course good to be smart, but probably drive and to be persistent is probably the most thing you really need, because as I think everybody who have worked sometimes thinks it's really annoying day, everything goes against you, and your boss is perhaps saying you're not doing good, or the customers don't want to buy, or the production is not working, and you have these days where nothing is working, and you come home in the evening and think, I must be such an idiot, because things are not really working out here, Right. And there you have to kind of be persistent and say, okay, tomorrow I will go and try, and then I start to solve this, and I will solve this, and I will solve this. And that is probably this, that you don't say, okay, I give up and then apply for a new job, perhaps I can find a new one. So you probably have to have that also when things is annoying or difficult, that you just keep fighting and take it step by step. And then also, it seems a little bit crazy, but sometimes we also ask our customers what is the most important for them when we have contact with them. And our customers come back and say, that is that when we is going to you guys, then we're getting an answer.
Right.
That
if
you're
you
reacting.
If you give a problem, you will provide a solution.
Yes, simply that you're reacting. And that's an interesting thing, because think of that interview, have a career, that you're actually a little bit, onto it, and you're reacting on it. And
I think it was the, now mixed reputation person, Woody Allen, the producer of movies, who said, success, 80% of success, he said, is showing up.
Yeah.
That's a lot, 80%. But you say, in terms of dealing with customers,
it's exactly the same,
it is like that.
Yeah. As you would say in Germany, erreichbar, that you come in contact with you and you are reacting and this.
You're available.
Available and this, and I think that's a big part of it. But you have been writing a book about this before I was a CEO, so you know. So if you can go to him in the break, and then he can tell you. Then he can tell you how you're going to be a CEO. So
they've heard too much from me already. But one aspect, a final aspect I'll ask you about, and that we also discussed with Cynthia, is this idea of going abroad, of having an international career. I've seen that indeed, that most of the people who ultimately achieve success, that at a quite early stage in their career, they go abroad. They get out of their comfort zone. Could you tell us a little bit about that part of your career? Because you said you went to work for Shell. Now, of course, you're back in Denmark, but for a while you were in the UK and Germany. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I would say that I had some time here in Germany, and I also speak some German. I think it was super interesting, because even Denmark and Germany is super close, neighboring countries. There is still a cultural difference. I don't know, have somebody been reading Hofstede in here?
Oh, so Hofstede?
Hofstede. There is some around, yes.
Nice,
nice. We've talked about it,
So it's an author who writes about
cultural difference, yes. And he always said that national culture is actually super strong. It's not a thing with change all the time.
Yeah.
And just coming from Denmark to Germany, there's also some difference in it. For example, there's a bigger power distance in Germany.
Right.
In Denmark, there is zero power distance. You can be a manager or a CEO, and if you tell your employees something, they'll look on you, and then you hear, You have to convince me. You have to.
In Denmark, I can call you Bjarne.
Yeah.
In Germany, I would probably have to call you Dr. Lykke Sørensen.
Yes, and then I think we have to say that things are also moving fast here in Germany, you know. But when I came here, you know, by the way, nearly 20 years ago, I was a little bit surprised about this power distance things. For example, my boss clearly said to me sometimes, yelling at me and saying, Bjarne, you are not doing that good, and I was really not used to that.
Right.
And that's just an example.
That would be possible, that somebody could tell you just because they're your boss, you're not doing a good enough job, and you have to just accept it.
Yeah, and it could be they were right, but I was still a little bit offended because in my culture it will be a little bit like...
It will be more collaborative.
We can sit and talk about it, but I think that, by the way, they have changed a lot in Germany. That is my feeling.
It is
about
changing quickly.
But the interesting learning about this is also that you learn a lot about your own culture by being it. And now going from Germany to Denmark is not super big, because if we then went to China or to Indonesia or some other places, the cultural difference is super big. So the cultural difference between Denmark and Germany is probably close to zero. If you take compared to if you took it in. Or I was also at a university studying in the US, and the cultural difference from Denmark to US is also much bigger than it is from Denmark to Germany.
I think a lot of people here in the room already experienced that and have overcome these cultural differences, because many people here actually come from countries that are very far away from Germany. One final question, and I want to get to questions. So if you have questions, think about them, and we're going to get to you after this final question. Bjarne, just if you had to give one piece of advice, people starting out today that want to succeed in their careers, what would it be?
Yeah. Coming a little bit back to this, that you know, you have so many choices, and the choices, the sum of the choices is then making your life. The existentialism thinking is that first of all, it's probably difficult to have a long plan, because you don't know what choices you will get if you make a choice now, and that makes it a little bit complicated. Personally, when I was coming out, I was thinking, it will be great. I will come out, and hopefully I'll get some okay salary and this, and it was definitely not. I think my career have went further than I actually have seen it done. But you know, the opportunity arose, and you got a little bit more interested in it. So I would say that everybody perhaps thinks that you should have a career plan. I'm not sure you should have a career plan. You should do what you like and what you think you are good at, and then see where's the opportunities in that. And then, by the way, Peter, we had a super interesting discussion when we was driving here, because I have been in Siemens, you know, many years, and somebody would say, I'm teaching in CBS and in Aarhus University in Aarhus there, and they also say, 30 years in the same company, you must be mad, how boring is that? But it's a question about, you'll still change your job every 3 years or 4 years, and then you will get new. And of course, I think perhaps many of you will say, okay, my career will be that I will be 3 years there, and 4 years there, and 5 years there, and
1 year there.
And 1 year there, perhaps even if you run into a bad boss, because you all know that you are hired in a company, but you leave because the boss is terrible.
Right. But so it's something that, don't make a long-term plan. You ended up 30 years at Siemens, but you could have had many moments where you would have followed another opportunity because it fit at that time better with your interest, your capability, what society needed. I think that's that concept of ikigai that they often talk about. Yeah. Where do all those things converge? I want to get the questions now, but first already, thank you for this first part of the conversation.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, and if you have questions, raise your hands. Yep, I'm going to take somebody over there, and also the lady over here, I think, in the middle. And you can tell us your name and perhaps what you're studying or where you're from, and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Lana. I'm from Latvia, and I study finance. And my question is about innovations, because it is undeniable that they will continue to conquer our society. And is there any specific or unexpected field that will not only benefit from either innovation or digitalization or automation, but also change us as society, our habits, our beliefs. And if you're allowed to tell, does Siemens has something in forecasts that is not AI? Because AI seems already kind of normal and expected.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
You see, thank you. That's a great question. That's a great question. We're already outdated. AI is like the Siemens phone of the 2024.
I think, you know, it's a super good question. It's a little bit because what is the next big thing? And if I knew what the next big thing is, I was sitting up in my room here, and then I would buy some stocks in the company who had the next big things. We hope it's Siemens. I actually think that generative AI, you know, the interesting thing about is that we say it's pretty new, but we had machine learning 25 years ago, which is actually a little bit the same as AI. The new stuff is probably the generative AI and a lot of the language thing, which came, you know, 1.5 years ago with ChatGPT and this stuff. And I must say honestly that I think that will be pretty big. It will change the way we work. I've been reading that somebody say that 40% of all jobs worldwide will change because of generative AI. So if I should say, if you ask me what is the next big thing, I would probably say that I think the next big thing probably is generative AI, because it will change all of us, how we are working, and it also give a lot of new opportunities. It will probably also end up creating new jobs, and then run some, but it also take some jobs away, but it will also creating new jobs. So that would be a little bit. I think that there's still a lot of potential to take out. Just now, I think you said you were studying finance, wasn't it correct? Understood, yeah? And I think in this finance area, it will be super big, where there's a lot of opportunity in the way we are handling our finance.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to have a question over there. Thank you. If we can get the microphone. Yeah, over there. I think there were two people next to each other. Why don't you both ask your question? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is RP. I'm doing my master's in marketing. Well, we've talked about technology and AI and how so many companies have access to so many tools and resources these days. And having that in mind, when we think about competitive landscape, it has shifted and changed in so many ways than how it was years ago. And originality has become a major issue for so many fields and companies. And my question would follow, how does Siemens differentiate itself from competitors in terms of technology, quality, and customer experience? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Being really grilled here, eh?
But that's also really interesting, because you can say there's a global competition, and even Siemens is a big company in market cap, and then we still have a lot of big competitors around the world, and how do we make sure to stay relevant? And there's one part of it, we need to make sure that our product system and software and solution is really on the top of it. But there's another thing into it which is a little bit interesting also, is that we also think of ecosystem and partners. I mentioned in the beginning that for example, some of the big tech companies like Microsoft and AWS, they are partners in this ecosystem about developing new. So I think that if you should stay competitive as a Siemens, you need to accept we cannot do everything ourselves. We need to have great partners and partnering up with them, and then together we are more than 1 + 1. There comes additional value out of. And I mentioned Siemens Accelerator, this industrial metaverse. It's an open digital business platform where actually we invite our partners in, and a partner in this case could also be a competitor, because it could be that we together can create additional value for our customers. And in the end of the day, the one who will win and still be here is the one who can create value for customers.
Yeah, and so, well, thank you. This made us all silent, but I think it's still a good answer. So thank you for that answer. This idea that as companies you're not only competitors, but you also collaborate to succeed in the future. Was there another question over there? Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, good morning, day, whatever it is. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Nikolai Nazarov. I'm finishing my bachelor's in the EUBS. I'm also a co-owner of a green energy company that specializes in recycling through the process of pyrolysis. Since you mentioned the energy sector and Siemens is participating in it, how would you approach the task of creating or finding partners who would be interested in a joint venture or any other form of partnership? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so regarding this, the green transformation, it's right that Siemens have a minority shareholder in Siemens Energy, which is working a lot in that area also, for example, with the wind turbines and this part. But Siemens also in the core business is having a lot of activities which work with the green transformation. I was mentioning that if we have more wind turbines and renewable energy into it, we really need to have a better grid system, and that more or less applies for all countries around the world and to strengthen the grid system. And then also, when we talk about digitalization, I think also that can help a lot in the green transformation. Because if we want to, if we can do things more effective with the digitalization, we can also be much more effective, and then we can reduce our consumption of electricity, and at the same time we can find ways to produce it without using so much emission. Then I think you asked a little bit about partners in that area also, because exactly the same applies here. That I think we as a society, as a company, Siemens have a big task in front of us, because we really have to work to solve this climate crisis we are in. We need to stop our CO2 emission, and I really mean stop, because we have to get it down and to zero pretty fast. And for that one, we need everybody on board. So companies have to work together, and societies have to work together to find smart solutions. Because it's also not just a question about that we shall not use fossil fuels, because we also have to think about that in many countries in the world, you have not yet had this uprising like we have had, for example, in the Western countries. So many people there will say, okay, we also want to enter into the middle class, and that will give more CO2 emission unless that we find partners and solutions where we can produce cheap energy without making CO2 emission out of it.
Very good, thank you so much. I'm trying to get a look at our producers to see if we have time for one more question from the audience. I know we're very close to our break. Is there one more question from the audience that we need to address over there? Yeah. And then I've got a bonus question for you.
How lucky can you be?
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Alexander. I'm coming from France, and I'm currently part of a program that will allow me to go in Sweden and in the US. So in 2 years, I will have 2 bachelors, one from France in Sweden also, and a master's from the United States.
Wow.
So I was reading today, thanks to ChatGPT.
No, it's amazing. I'm very jealous.
I was reading today that Siemens made a deal with the Deutsche Bahn to sell like 43 trains for 1.5 billion. So this was great, and I think this is a great opportunity. So as I will do the same today, is Siemens taking internships? Maybe for French people, you know.
We already know that you have a bachelor degree from 3 countries, and now, of course, the question is very good.
By the way, cool, you're going to Sweden, you know, that is our neighboring country with Denmark, and we share a lot. Yes, there is a lot of internships, and they can all be found in our Siemens jobs. Come and there, you know, it will really be great, because it's really important for us, because internships is great for the students, but it's also super great for Siemens. And if you are pointing in direction of Sweden, we also do it there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. You see, we're hands-on here. We're hands-on. It's amazing to learn, but we want to apply it.
Yeah.
You see?
You can also get an internship.
No, I would only work on the defunct functions of Siemens. I would want to work on the phone division. So it doesn't exist anymore. You know, we're out of time, but I just want to, the bonus question is actually because you are here today, and I want people to know this, because of Joanne.
Yes.
Joanne, are you in the room still, or are you somewhere? There you are.
Yeah!
Joanne, hello, Joanne. Nice to meet you. Good. Thank you for bringing Bjarne here. Because you and Joanne actually studied together.
Yes.
You did a PhD studies together in Poland, which is amazing. Now, I was thinking you might have done this when you were both, you know, even younger than you are today. But in fact, it's only a few years ago. You were already, of course, you will be forever young. But but why did you choose to do a PhD already quite a bit in your career?
Yeah, thanks. It's a super good question. It comes out that I was sitting together with a colleague in Siemens 10 years ago, and then we was starting to discuss what was actually the explanation. If you had a satisfied customer, would that customer also be loyal? And the other question is, could we create a kind of model which could explain how to get a satisfied customer? Because that would be cool if you had a structural equation model where you said, okay, here we actually know how to create a satisfied customer, and will that satisfied customer also be loyal? And then we put another thing into it. We said, hey, is a part of the key actually employee engagement? As a meaning that if you love your job, Peter, and you every morning you come, you say, this is the best thing in my life. Will it then have an impact into we get more satisfied customers, and then they'll be more loyal, and then we will, by the way, earn more money? And we were sitting and discussing that every time we were together, and then at one point in time we said to each other, why not make a PhD in it?
Study. And you did it.
Yes.
Well, congratulations. And that's why we now know you as Doctor.
Exactly.
So that's amazing. Well, and thanks again to Joanne for bringing you here. We're very happy with that. And with that, I want to thank you one final time for joining us here, to you for inspiring us in the second Learning from Leisure sessions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thank you. That's amazing. Well, that's fantastic, and you know, time flies. That means you've got really big fans over there. That means that we've already come to the first reward. Although, come on, let's face it. You know, just learning from these leaders isn't a reward in itself, isn't it? The first reward is we get to take a small break now. So if you want to go to the restroom, get some fresh air, now is the time to do that, and we'll reconvene here in about 15 minutes. See you then. can actually open this roof, and then we will have the appearance of fresh air, even though we're in this room. If everyone can take their seats. There's only one more session between you and your friends having a drink. So, okay, now that our future Siemens intern has taken his seat, I'm going to take that everyone that needs to be here is here for the final session of Learning from Leaders today in our Munich session. And that is going to be our session with Dr. Stiene Riemer. Stiene will come up stage in just a minute. And what I want to do in the meanwhile is just very briefly introduce this session to you and to introduce Stiene to you. Stiene is a partner at BCG, the global consulting firm that you all know, I think. She's based right here in Geneva. Sorry, in Geneva. I live in Geneva, that's why I say Geneva. She's based right here in Munich. And she told me, I'm going to just have a look to make sure that everybody upstairs knows that we've started. And if not, guys, then I'm going to ask you to come and present today. All right, it's time. You're the only one. Time to take a seat. Right here in Munich, Stiene is based. She actually walked over here. She said, wonderful walk in the Munich winter sun. And she has given us the honor of being here today. Stiene is a global leader of the financial practice of BCG, and she's also a leader of BCG X. Now, when I say X, I'm going to ask later on whether that means AI, but we'll hear all about that in the next hour. For now, I want to welcome Dr. Stiene Riemer on the stage. Welcome to you, and a warm welcome from our students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody, for having me, and thank you for the patience. I just learned I'm the last thing between you and your drinks, so I'll hope I make it as interesting as possible for all of you. As you've heard, I'm also from BCGX, and I'm sure most of you know what BCG is. BCGX, we are, let's say, the build and development unit. So what we focus on within BCG is developing hands-on keyboard, the different AI, Gen AI solutions, implementing digital strategies. So it's not only slides, it's really hands-on keyboard, delivering software, delivering implementations. This is what we do really as part of BCG, and this is what our X stands for. I would like to take the opportunity today to talk to you about, I think, one of the most revolutionary topics probably from the last decades, which is like generative AI, and the impact that we see it can have, and what we've learned so far from executives around the world. How are they thinking about generative AI? Where do they see the value? But what are also right now, still more than a year into the journey, still a lot of the challenges that we see, and what is thereby also the potential for 24. Before I go there, being a consultant as well, I need to give a bit of a definition and be clear in the way of how we think about the different terms. Because AI has obviously been around already for a longer time. And the way that I would like to think about it is, there is a classical, traditional AI, and there is generative AI. The two of them are very complementary solutions. And I think a very good way of thinking of it is like the human brain. We have the left part of our human brain, which is there for logic, for calculation, for making decisions. And then we have the right part of our brain, which is there for creative action, for synthesize, for interpretation. And this is exactly how you can think about those two components of AI. There is the predictive AI that makes logical decisions and recommendations, what we've heard a lot about in the sense of machine learning also in the past. And then there is the new technology, the generative AI, which really helps us to take creative action, to synthesize information, to aggregate information up. And those two are most powerful when they come together. In the same way as our human brain, they act really complementary, and that is when they are most powerful. Now, generative AI, of course, over the last 12 to 18 months, with the rise of ChatGPT, has become a huge topic really broadly outside of academia in terms of what are the application areas. And we have spoken to executives, more than 1,400, really across the world, across the different types of industries. So in telecommunication, consumer products, financial institutions, and have surveyed them over the time in terms of what are the insights into AI and generative AI they have, where do they see the power, and how do they see this coming for 24. We have seen over the last 6 months a significant change in the assessment of executives and of the power of generative AI. And one thing out of this survey has become extremely clear: 24 will be the year of really scaling up the solutions, moving out of the first experimentation stages, bringing the solution really into business, and really scaling it up to deliver the full value. And what we've seen here is 71% of executives said they will significantly increase their investments on tech, and nearly 90% of them say AI and Gen AI is on the top 3 of their agenda items to deal with 24 and to really transform the businesses. Nonetheless, already being into the journey for like more than a year now, most organizations are not satisfied yet with the developments they have been taken so far. And more than two-thirds of them are really dissatisfied with what they have achieved within their organization so far, especially moving on from the traditional AI, from our left part of the brain, into the right part of the brain, the generative AI. And they have named 3 core reasons for them not to get there. The first one is lack of talent and skills. And here I think we have to clearly differentiate. There is very few people out that have extensive experience yet with LLMs and all the underlying technology. But one of the big challenges is also upskilling your workforce, upskilling everybody in terms of how to use this technology in an effective way. Most of them don't have a very clear roadmap in terms of how to integrate Gen AI in a strategic fashion across the organization and really scaling it up, really moving from first experimentation into full retransformation of processes. And then the third one, very important globally, even more so in the European Union, is how to deal with responsible AI and what are the considerations that we actually want to put in. How far can we go, and do we want to go with that technology? How do we think about data security, about information security, and all of these topics? And how can we deal with that in a situation where everything in terms of regulation is still forming around us? So this is the third big topic that we have seen from the executives in terms of why they haven't moved as quickly as they would like to, and where they really aim to double down this year. There are, of course, also companies that are winners on this journey and that are clearly moving ahead. What we see for those winning companies right now is they focus on top-line growth by increasing their productivity. They leverage all this generative AI technology to take out repeatable tasks where the human is not adding so much value, and then focus actually the work on top-line growth. They are also upskilling very systematically the workforce, like everybody in the existing organizations. They are upskilling them, they allow them to use the technology, and there is trainings in terms of how can you use it in day-to-day situations, like call logs, how can you use it in supporting with emails and these types of technology. They think about the cost of use, what are the implications of using it, and how to integrate it. They all have built on the winning strategic relationship with tech partners to be really on the forefront and being able to scale up. And they have been addressing the topic of responsible AI, having a governance structure around and really thinking about how to integrate it, how to quantitatively assess the risk, and also how to integrate it with the company's purposes, values, how far do we want to go from a governance perspective. And what we see, and I think this is a very, very important concept to think about when we think about generative AI and how to implement it. There's 3 different ways of actually using the technology: deploy, reshape, and invent. Deploy means we straight away use the existing technology in processes today without much further ado. Call summary is a good example, where I can just use the technology and it summarizes for me the information. Reshape is really where I go in and rethink an existing process that I have. As Peter mentioned, I come from financial institutions, so I need to use a financial institutions example right now, I'm sorry. A good one is, for example, money laundering. Every bank has to detect money launderers. What you can do with those technologies is you can leverage the AI to make predictions on all the transactions. Then you can use the generative AI to actually write up the finding and to integrate it. So you really change the process of the human going in, looking it up, writing it. You really transform the process here. And then the last is invent. You really think about new business areas that can completely be changed through generative AI. What we see, in line with what I said before from the survey, most companies are still in the deploy stage, leveraging the technology straight away. And I think the big potential and also the focus for 24 is in the reshape, really integrating it end to end and like horizontally transforming existing processes with the technology. So I think so much for that, and really great opportunity for the year ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please take a seat. We've already learned a lot. Please take a seat. I've taken a lot of notes. I suppose that if the people here in the room know that I'm a guy from the generation of the Siemens phone, so I probably should have used a phone and have had this all transcribed or synthesized, or perhaps even just download your report about these findings, which I know also exists. But let's go a little bit deeper on a few of those things, and thank you again for joining us here. It's a real pleasure, and I would say an honor. We're all paying attention and taking notes. But first, before we get to the really deep questions, I just want to ask you one more time. I know you already explained it a little bit, but why is it called BCGX and not BCG AI?
That is a very good question, and in retrospect, giving Twitter changing the name to X, it may not have been the smartest, but we've been there first. We had X first, so BCGX. It comes from the fact that we actually integrated multiple units. We had a focus on AI, which was our Gamma unit. We had a focus on ventures build, which was called Digital Ventures. And then we had a pure IT implementation focus. And we decided within BCG, we bring all of this together in one unit to be as effective as we can. And then it was BCGX. And again, we've been first with the X.
It's great. And you know, I've got to say kudos also to your design team, because now I remember BCG slides being like white and green, and these ones are like black and green. So it's very modern. But in your business, BCGX, tell us how dominant, you said it's 3 or 4 functions that have come together. Tell us how dominant in BCGX your work on AI is now in terms of client interests and
AI, and especially generative AI, is one of the topics already of 23 and also in 24. And I will very clearly say, not only within X, not only where like we develop the solutions, it's really across the company where we really help setting up the strategic approaches, how to think about it, really rethinking the processes. I think that is one of our core beliefs in like X and in BCG in general. Whenever it comes to AI and technology, we talk about this iceberg, where we say 10% of the solution is the algorithm behind. 20% is the tech and being able to scale it, but 70% is actually like the process and the change management. Making people to adopt the technology, really rethinking the processes and all of that, and hence it is really a topic for the full company.
Yeah, I imagine it's an amazing topic to work on, and you already said what actually is the state of play, which is to say, on the one hand, companies are all convinced this is the year that they're going to implement AI, not just experiment, but implement. On the other hand, you said almost just as many company leaders say, but we may actually not be ready for it, which is a wonderful example of what Cynthia earlier on said, how you turn a problem or a roadblock into an opportunity.
Yes.
But tell us, what does a typical company, for example, here in Europe, what does a typical company look like that wants to implement AI but can't? What is their situation? Why can't they implement AI?
Yeah, I would say they have started in individual functions to deploy individual use cases. I think two areas where we see Gen AI being adopted very early is one really on the technology side and everywhere where there's code development itself, because this technology is very efficient in terms of helping you with the code. Another area, for example, is like marketing, where it can be very efficient in terms of designing creatives and get these things. And what we see is like those individual places, there have been like initial builds been done. What we see now is really a step up, the agenda being owned really by the CEOs of the company and really driving, I think, two things. One is like the strategic roadmap. So what is our roadmap? What comes first? Which areas do we want to go at? And then the second, really, how do we do strategically the upskilling? How do we get everybody on board of that journey and make sure that we are not losing part of the workforce?
That's the strategy element of it. And of course, you guys are great in implementing strategy. But so it comes down to the fact that actually implementing AI in your specific job, like for example, for me, if I was writing an article, I could then implement AI, I could ask ChatGPT for some ideas. But you say, if you look at the bigger company that you're part of, that's really only 10% of the potential of AI. Is that it?
No, I would say it is the full potential if you do it right, but only having the algorithm. So only because I give you ChatGPT, it doesn't mean that you use it, or a lot of people will just not use it. It is really about getting the use implemented, getting people to understand what are advantages, how can I use it. Also very important, what are limitations? There are things that models, AI, Gen AI are really good at, but there are certain limitations. Making sure that people feel safe, have a good understanding, and really know where they can use it. Because I think what we've seen in very, very early stages, more than 50% of the companies immediately shut down the use of all of these types of technologies.
The legal department.
Basically concerns about data privacy and everything, and I mean, there have been breaches out there, of course, and so it was this, and now getting it in and making sure that everybody knows how to use it.
So there's the promise, which, because we had a survey here, a polling, you could say, in the previous session where we asked who of you uses AI every day, once a week, and then less than that, and the big majority here says either every day or at least once a week.
Yeah.
But you would say that in the companies you've studied, it's not that much.
It's not yet that much, and it's really about getting it in. Because, I mean, people stick to habits, people stick to the way of how they were used to deal with it. Then there is a lot of uncertainty. What does it actually mean with the data? How can I work with it? Am I safe using it? And this is not yet fully adopted.
And then, of course, on the other side, there are certain things that you cannot do with AI because it's not allowed, it's a gray zone, it might get you into trouble because you don't know about copyright, about patents, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think there is two of those. One is really like the legal aspects, where of course you have to have like a very clear approach and measurement and be very clear how to use it. We would also typically always see a human-in-the-loop approach. I think like AI and all of this technology is most powerful when you still have the human who has a look and who checks in a very efficient way. And then I think there is a second component, AI, generative AI, all of this lives based on data. So I need to have enough data and information. There are sweet spots of the technology, where the technology is really good and where you should use it, but there are also points where the technology is not as strong, where the human is way better. And really being also clear, what are the sweet spots? What is like the domain of expertise of the AI, I would say? Deploying it there, but also being very clear there are limitations where the AI is not that strong.
And so it's finding that sweet spot, that balance. You know, I've done some confessions to the audience earlier on. I was actually one of the rare people who doesn't use AI very often, at least not actively or consciously. But I will tell you, just between us, that this week I did use AI. And I used it to ask it which companies in Europe, a list of companies in Europe, that have gone to the European Commission to complain about antitrust practices to the European Commission about some other company.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you know what happened?
No.
ChatGPT told me I'm not allowed to tell you that.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, good for them that they have put some legal barriers on it. But for me, as the one time that I wanted to give ChatGPT a chance,
it was not there.
I said it wasn't very helpful. But I understand that in general, actually, it is, and that it's really a big, it makes a big difference already at the pioneering companies, the 10% of companies that are ahead of the game. Now, let's apply this to this room, the people who are here. And you know that these are people that are willingly using AI every day or every week. So they're ready to go. Actually, we asked 2 people, and they were even coding AI, which gave me a heart attack, but, you know, obviously is good for them. Now, they will have to go and choose for which company to work in next year or in 2 years' time. How can they make the right choice? How can they know which company is actually advanced in terms of its implementation of AI?
Generally, I think all companies will be, and all of them are adopting. I would say what's interesting is, from my perspective, there is probably 4 different types of interaction. I would assume nearly all of you will be in contact with AI in their work life in the future. And I think there is like 4 different ways generally. The first one is like you really develop AI, your hands on keyboard like programming. The second one is you shape the AI in terms of you design the processes, you think about how to integrate it, how you further improve. Then a lot of you will use it in their daily base when they reach out to contacts, leverage outputs from generative AI. And then, of course, there will be some of you that will govern the AI and look at the use. And I think in that sense, mostly everybody will be in close contact. I guess it's also a bit of a question in which type of function you will be.
And they're ready. We're ready. And I say we, and I mean they, because obviously I'm not. But they're ready, and today. They're ready for 2024. But of course, this is just, as you said, it's a technology that's actually has been around for longer than we realize with machine learning, algorithms, and so on and so forth. I'm going to ask you some personal questions about that. But also, I assume then a technology that the impact will come not just next year, but in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So if we now peer into the future, what can we do to be ready, not just today as individuals, but how can we stay relevant as workers? What are the skills that we should be working on to continue to be ready for AI in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly the work will, to a large degree, hopefully become even more interesting for us as the workers, because I think what a lot of the technology can do is like automatable, repeatable task taking out and really making us focus on the more complex cases, looking at those, helping design those. And in that sense, I think we will always be very relevant. One thing that I think will be extremely important is really understanding this, what are strengths and weaknesses of the technology, and what do I also need to be aware of when I leverage it? What are the limitations? Where can I go? But where's also the power, and where should I use it? And I think being aware of this and kind of staying on top of this will be something that will be very important.
I guess that gives us a reason to study law after today, that we know that, you know, somebody who knows about AI but also knows about its boundaries.
I would say law or like mathematics or data science or physics.
Right. Now, we have to admit that you are a little bit biased
slightly
towards the latter, because you actually have a PhD in, I suppose, data science and mathematics and all these complicated matters. So let's maybe and I want to ask you about that now, but final question. How about you? How do you use AI in your daily work with BCG?
I would love to code a bit more hands-on keyboard. Unfortunately, I think I'm a bit too senior for that right now. I still sometimes do it just for the fun of it, I would say, but probably more on the weekends. Apart from that, using the technologies really sometimes to look up what we have, or like where we use the technology within the company also is we have a knowledge navigator where we have all the materials from past cases. And in the past, it was extremely painful to search something because you had keywords and then it wasn't working well. And now with the new technology, it immediately combines the information, it searches for it, and you can get it very handy. I think that is one of the application areas that I very much enjoy.
I remember, you know, I used to work in a very long time ago. I used to work for Bain. I don't represent Bain as well as you represent BCG. I know, you're in green, I should have come in red. But and we had that library back in the day, you know, when the animals could still speak, of course.
Yeah.
And it's true that it was great, but it was hard to get access to the right cases. Yeah. And so I guess one of the consequences in my mind is that working for a top knowledge company that has a history of knowledge and cases and so on and so forth is going to be more powerful for workers going forward.
Exactly, because it really helps you to like get streamlined access to all this parsed information and knowledge in a very, very efficient way, and it helps you to pre-select. And what it doesn't only pre-select give you the core information, it always gives you the source and where is it coming from, but it makes all of that, like you have a way easier access to knowledge and content from my perspective.
So I feel like that's like something that we can take away when we choose a company, is choose a company that actually has a deep knowledge, because I suppose the AI that you use, the Navigator, I think it's called, right? Is it right?
Yeah, exactly.
The Navigator is one that is proprietary to BCG. In other words, you have to work at BCG, or you have to pay BCG to get access to it. Yeah. Now, that's amazing what we're learning about AI, and I have no doubt that there's going to be questions from the audience about all of that work. But before we get to the questions of the audience, I also want to ask you some more personal questions about your career and your life and all the things you've learned and how you got to become an expert in AI. And my first question is this. We've heard from you that you've done a PhD, which is amazing, and we congratulate you on it, of course, and we will call you doctor forever. But that also means, I suppose, that you didn't actually start to work in the real world until what, you were about 30 or so?
25, actually.
Oh, wow, okay, you're one of those geniuses that finishes their PhD at, okay.
But I really, really enjoyed the PhD at the point in time, to be honest. No, I left working on like complex problems, like really complex problems, and I did my, at that time, I think I'm old, I did my diploma. There was no bachelor master's at that point. So I did my diploma, and then it was a bit of a natural thing also, like for people coming from mathematics, physics, going in their PhD. And I was really passionate about like still going very deep, solving these problems. And I had the opportunity to actually travel around the world, go to different universities while I did my PhD.
Oh, is that right?
And that felt like one of the most amazing opportunities at that point in time.
Because you were studying in the north of Germany?
Yes.
Which, you know, wonderful place, but I suppose there's a lot of wind, there's a lot of cold, and there's not so many people.
Yeah, exactly. That is about right. But then I had the opportunity to visit the Fields Institute in Toronto, to go to Tel Aviv, to Israel, like do my studies there. I had really the opportunity to travel a lot, work with a lot of different research groups, which was amazing. Right. And I wouldn't want to miss that. It was really amazing. But at some point, as you said, there was an interest of exploring also like real world problems, still being curious and applying complex solutions, but for something more, with more application in the real world. And like a very good friend of mine actually was working in consulting at the point, and then she said, maybe look at this, we also do, and this is basically how...
And you already dressed the part to work for BCG.
Exactly.
So you were ready to do that. And so you ended up working for BCG, I think. Did you always work in Munich? Were you always based here?
I started in Hamburg and then went to Munich. But technically, I was always located in Germany. But I've done very few of my work actually in Germany.
I see.
So I have worked from South Korea to the West Coast in the US, from like Norway to South Africa. I've worked in like plenty of places,
Wow.
which I always found amazing, but have always been located in.
And so that's maybe, because we've been talking earlier about, if you make your way in your career, that one of the crucial aspects to succeed is that you actually go abroad, that you get access to different countries and cultures. But basically, you're showing us a case where you can actually have your home country or one country as your base, but then still get all that international exposure.
Yeah, and I think that's, from my perspective, really one of the amazing things about consulting, the flexibility. Because I've always been able to live here, have my center point here, have
Right.
a lot of my private life here, but still have been able to explore the work in all the different countries and what we learn from there and what we take away and the different, I mean, the interactions with our counterpart is the core piece of being successful. And it is so different. I mean, it's different working in the US than it is working in Germany.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
It's very different working in Norway, for example, and like getting used to this and exploring these opportunities. And I could do all of that while still living in Germany.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, except I suppose for your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
But that's another story. At BCG, obviously you've been successful and you became partner, but you haven't really taken the beaten path, I would say, in the sense that, sure, you work for financial services and so on and so forth, but at some point you decided to join, and I don't want to complicate matters here, I know you work for BCG AI, BCG X, but actually at that point in time you joined a part of BCG which is called BCG
Gamma.
Gamma. Okay, so for those of us who've studied Greek, that's another letter of the alphabet. But what else is BCG Gamma?
BCG Gamma was really the core of the data science unit. And while, of course, within BCG, we've always been like developing models, applying those types of techniques, we decided to really double down our efforts on data science at that point. And while, for example, I was from the start working on these types of topics for financial institutions, we then decided to really double down, have this unit, focus on hiring also more talent, very specialized. And I found it like an amazing opportunity to go there at that point in my career, help also build something new within the company. Think about how should career paths look like for those roles? How can we integrate it well in our daily functional work, basically, which was that was an amazing opportunity, and hence I decided to join this and help develop, while of course still focusing on my work within financial institutions.
Right. And so, you take that sort of sidetrack in BCG that you work for a specialized division. Would you say, if you look at it more opportunistically from your career, looking back now that you're in global leadership, would you say that that was a good decision to sort of say, I'm going to try something new rather than the traditional path to become a partner?
In retrospect, it was something good. Though I would say the one thing that I have taken away from me is whenever I'm passionate about something and whenever I'm really passionate and I want to do this thing and I'm excited and curious about this, I think this is like when I perform best. And so I think it's a bit of an implicit outcome of this, but I was just extremely curious about building something new. I mean, we don't have this opportunity so often in our life, and on a topic that is really close to my heart. So
yeah, I mean, listen, data science, it sounds like it's close to your heart. Maybe one day I can say the same. And then what happened to BCG Gamma? Does it still exist, or is that now also part of BCG X?
It's part of BCG X because we brought the broader build and technology functions together, and it's part of that.
And so you are today still embodying, let's say, BCG Gamma by being the leadership of BCG X.
Exactly, and I actually lead our data science chapter as part of this also globally, so really still helping to design how should this look like and all of this, yes.
That's amazing. I mean, I guess that would make you the alpha of BCG Gamma, the leader of BCG Gamma. I'm going to stop with those cheeky jokes. It's clearly getting time for the audience. Some questions for the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand. Before we get to the questions, just a quick thank you for this interview on your career. And then now it's time for the student questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We've got somebody over there, and somebody over here, and then somebody over there.
Hi, my name is Mee. Thank you for the great insights that you had. I assume that not all of your workers are ready or willing to use generative AI in their everyday work. So my question is, does BCG have any internal campaign or workshop to prepare your colleagues for the shifts in the ways of working right now?
Yes.
Good question, good question.
We actually do that a lot in a lot of different instances. So yes, we train everybody in terms of the use and the implications of those technologies with really on the technical side, what does it mean, but how do we actually adopt it? We have those like our knowledge navigator where we really encourage people, where we give trainings in terms of how to use it. And then, of course, we have a lot of specialized teams within the different industry areas that focus on working with the clients, that also skill up our dear colleagues and really bring this in. And yeah, as I said, we already use it a lot and it's very powerful.
Excellent, thank you so much. There was a question, I think, also there and here in the middle, so let's see if we can get to those questions as well.
Thank you so much for your speech. My question is regarding the newcomers to BCG. What qualities do you value the most? And what would students need to focus on when applying for an internship? Because personally, I'm interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, there is three things that I think I have learned over the years that are most important to being successful in that line of work. The first one is being really curious about the topic. Like oftentimes it's like you go really deep and want to understand. I remember at one point when I was actually focusing on like building up like our data science unit, I was working not in financial institutions but on a grocery store. And I remember I was going there on a Saturday in the store to find out how do they place the products, how do they put the prices, because I really wanted to exactly see how this is done. I think being that curious will make a huge difference. Then I think the second one is you will at some point in your career get feedback, and in consulting we are oftentimes very feedback heavy. And sometimes somebody will give you feedback on something that you can do better. Please take this on and really work on it. I think learning how to deal with this feedback and further improving, it's always tough when somebody comes to you and like gives you some advice what you could do better. I think it is so incredibly powerful to take it on and work on it. So be open for that. And the third point is be flexible. One of the amazing things about the job is like you can do so many different things. You will be so flexible. Though there's also one thing, if on Monday you sit down on your desk and have planned what you want to do for the week, this is never going to work out. So be open and like take this as an opportunity, work with your teammates and really be flexible. I think those are probably the three most important things based on my experience
That's great advice. Thank you so much. We got a question over there and then over there. And I'm going to let you ask your question, but I just want to ask you, as a follow-up, what was the best feedback, constructive feedback that you ever got at BCG?
Oh, plenty during the years. One very constructive feedback I got is ask for advice.
Don't sit on a problem.
You always have to sit on the problem and make it only yours. We have plenty of amazing colleagues. Go to them and ask them for advice. They will all be happy to help you. And I mean, sometimes I still forget, but because everybody is so busy, and you don't want to interrupt them in their daily work. But I think that is like so important.
That's amazing. Okay, we got a question over there.
Yeah, thank you for your speech. First of all, you mentioned some sweet spots today in marketing, in data management, the usage of AI. But I have a question. Working at BCG, of course, financial projections is a big thing. How is AI used in financial projections, in financial forecasting? Because from my experience, using ChatGPT in financial forecasting or mathematics, it has a lot of errors. And is there an improvement in this area?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think this is mainly a topic more of the traditional AI. You can like now increase with generative AI technologies. From my perspective, there have been great advancements in terms of forecasting. There has been like the classical kind of time series approach that has been used for a long time. With the more advanced predictive AI technologies that are out there in terms of like gradient booster neural nets, this has significantly been improved, and there is amazing approaches out to do really like those forecasting in terms of what's going to happen. And what you can do right now is really layer Gen AI on top. I would say I see this mostly as an add-on that is still checked and not automatically being integrated.
Wow, that's exciting and scary at the same time. I'm about to buy a house, and I suppose that some AI program out there already knows whether that's a wise financial decision or not. But don't tell me the answer, because I'm about to sign. Over there was a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for coming here and explaining what BCG is doing today in terms of AI. We know that BCG provides multiple services, building strategies for businesses and even governments. In the future, AI may offer the same service in terms of building strategies for businesses. Is AI a threat to BCG, and is BCGX a defense strategy towards other AI platforms?
Okay, thank you. Good question.
So, I mean, I would say AI will be an important part really to be integrated in all the different components. But I always think like adding like the human part on top is one of the things that will be most important. We have run a study also like with the Bruce Henderson Institute a couple of months ago, where we actually surveyed like what are the advantages and where's the AI good, but where do I really need the human actually in place? And what we've been seeing there are areas on pure forecasting, for example, where the AI is extremely good and clearly outperforming the human. But then there are areas in terms of complex business problem solving where a lot of unclear, unstructured, but especially like not clear information is coming together. And the interesting piece here is the human has clearly outperformed the AI and also clearly outperformed the people that started to use the AI and were not aware of the limitations. So hence, I think there will always be a very important work for all of us as well, and not only the AI. And I think those are the things that we really very importantly need to integrate.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think we went through these questions from the students at a very rapid pace, and yet we learned so much. You know, I remember this last point that you make, that you know AI may outperform in straight tasks, but not in complex issues, and certainly also not when humans don't use the AI in the right way. That's, I think, a fantastic, insightful note to end on. I have to say, we have to thank you, of course, and we will, but I also want to congratulate our audience, because you know they really paid a lot of attention to everything that you said. I think it's because all that you said was so interesting. We learned a lot from you. We hope you can stay with us together with the other speakers for the drinks part, which obviously is not AI related. But for now, I want to thank you one final time for a very insightful learning from leaders.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I know you've all been very patient to bear with us this whole afternoon. I hope you found it very insightful, and we are indeed going to head out to drinks. But before that, I have to get the word back to our Master of Ceremonies and your Dean. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to our guest speakers. Thank you so much for being here. Really exciting for us to open again Learning from Leaders chapter here in Munich. I am really hoping for the next Learning from Leaders here in Munich. Of course, hopefully together with Peter. Again, thank you so much. And yeah, right now I'm more than happy to welcome you to our networking cocktail that we will have right behind that wall, which should go up quite soon, if not yet. So let's wait for a few minutes for it to open. And again, thank you so much for coming. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all.